probably also follow up too as they get settled in. My name is Jonathan Shan. I'm with the equity crowdfunding platform for video games called Fig. Right now it's a great time to be a gamer. It's great to be a consumer of games. There's indie PC games continue to be really creative and engaging, and games on. You also have AAA, great AAA experiences continue to be on console. When we were seeing deeply immersive games on VR as a new platform, and mobile gaming also gives us the ability and opportunity to play games throughout their entire day, even at the line of Starbucks. And so I think the numbers that Intel shared earlier today kind of reflect that. But what does this mean for the indie developer, and how does the indie developer get their game to the consumer? I think they're faced with a lot of choices. And I think the question is what can they work with publishers, or what are the alternatives for them to help them get their game in front of consumers? So we have a great set of panelists today that can help us dive into that question. I'll let them, I think, first introduce themselves, and we can just go down the line.
Sure. Was this on? Okay. My name is Steve G from Adult Swim. I'm senior manager of business development and developer relations. Long story short, I go on the internet, talk to developers, and look for games to publish on console, Steam, and mobile.
That was short. I had to make mine short too now. So my name is Keith Katz. I'm co-founder of Execution Labs. We are based primarily in Montreal, although I'm based here in San Francisco. Sorry. And we started life as this sort of an accelerator for indie game studios, providing funding and help. And we've been around for about 4 years now. We've since sort of evolved into sort of basically an early stage equity investor, still very hands-on, but that's what we do.
Hi, and I'm Dan Adams. I work for Unity Technologies in the Made with Unity section. So that basically means that our job is to try to find great games and try to help get them promoted and find success. It's a nice position to be in. My history, I came from. I got my start at IGN, so I was there for about 8 years, a while back at this point. And then I did some consulting and I was PR manager at Unity for a little while, and then switched over to this because I have more of a passion for games. So this is where I am now.
Great. So thanks for being here. So each of these individuals clearly have their own sort of unique perspective on what it means to publish for indies. I think we want this to be a free-flowing discussion, and so we'll probably leave time at the end for questions. So keep them, as you think of questions, keep them, and then you'll be able to ask them at the end. So I think, I guess to start, it'd be great to talk about, to see how you guys characterize the market today for indies. What is the market that they face? How would you characterize the challenges or opportunities that they might see in publishing their games? And maybe Steve, you're probably more on point on this since you're a publisher.
Sure. Obviously, I'm biased because I work for a publisher. But definitely the indie space, and it's just gaming in general, is really crowded. I mean, if you look at the Steam store today, it's getting more crowded on a daily basis. I remember just chatting with someone earlier today. It's if you look at 3 years ago, you maybe had 5 to 8 games launch a week. Now you have that much a day. And tools for developers are getting cheaper, if not free. So the great side of it is there's definitely more diversity of great developers, talented folks coming in to get their stuff out there, but that means it's just more crowded. So yeah, I think being a publisher, or to not use that word publisher, I guess some people might be a dirty word, but more of a label, of curation label, help kind of pick and choose certain games that we champion, help get you guys out there from marketing, PR, et cetera. But yeah, it's definitely a crowded space. So.
And I think we also look at it sort of almost as two very distinct markets. There's sort of the free-to-play gaming market, and there's the premium gaming market. And I know Adult Swim does mostly, if not exclusively, premium stuff so far, right? All premium so far?
On mobile, we're free-to-play and premium.
Yeah, you have some free-to-play stuff on mobile. I mean, but the dynamics of the two markets are completely different. Or they're different. They're not as completely different as they were, a year or two ago. Steve mentioned Steam's storefront is becoming increasingly similar to what you see on iOS and on Google Play. So those things are starting to look very similar, meaning the competition is higher. But the capital required for entering those two markets is actually very different, and the scale of the studio required to tackle those two markets as an indie is very different also. We can dive into that later.
From our perspective, we see a ton of games coming in all the time. We have a portal, madewithunity.com, and obviously everything that's going on there are just Unity games, but just, the amount of games being put on there is a little bit overwhelming, even for somebody that, is, my entire job is just to look at what's being made with Unity and try to find some good stuff. But there's, all of the people that are building games are finding different ways to approach the market. Some people are very successful self-publishing. Some people are finding some of these new indie publishers that are very indie friendly in terms of, providing good creative support, or I should say creative freedom, and providing the support on the logistical side in order to get a game finished and distributed. But I think there's just, there's all kinds of options at this point. It's just really finding what's right for your game and finding the right avenue to go.
This, I guess, this problem of having really cluttered platforms, is this something that you think should go into how a developer thinks about which platform to build for or to port for? Are these dynamics that should influence the way that they run their business or the games that they develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly when you're looking for funding, marketing support, et cetera, I mean, you really need to already have a handle on what your strengths are as a studio. So I think it's sort of the inverse is true, which is figure out where your strengths are as a studio and then go there versus trying to follow whatever you think is the best market opportunity. Because it'll be very clear very quickly if you are, a free-to-play mobile developer trying to do, a premium experience for Steam or console, and, sort of conversely, if you're really just best at doing, a 4-hour, 6-hour, 8-hour nice single-player experience on PC console, and you're trying to pitch, a free-to-play mobile game or, web game with live ops and, server architecture and all that stuff, that's going to become pretty apparent pretty quickly also.
So I guess, if faced with, the wanting to get their game out to the largest, base of consumers as possible, for an indie developer, they're probably faced with the idea of like, should I work with a publisher or should I try to self-publish myself? What would you say, Steve, is something that would be one of the reasons for that why they might want to choose to look at working with the publisher?
Well, like Dan said, it's best for you to decide what's best for you, because working with a publisher, the relationship is obviously very important. Obviously, publishers could provide money for funding, for development. We could help with marketing, PR. We provide QA, things like that. But it's also a relationship because things happen. How are you dealing with that producer? How's your working relationship with them? How are you with their biz dev guy? Can you call them in the middle of the night or hit them up on Skype? You can hit us up because that happens a lot. So it's kind of the relationship because we are your partner. I mean, the way I always tell young, small studios we deal with is we're kind of like we're filling the holes in what would be a traditionally larger company. Yes, there's development of a game, there's all that other stuff on the production side, but there's also who's handling your PR, who's handling your marketing, who's doing community management. There's a lot of other hats that would normally be worn in a traditional game company. How do you work with those folks if you want to go with a publisher? How they fill those holes, how they complement you. Are they supporting you the way you want? Do you guys agree on the roadmap? And do they get your game? I mean, that's the biggest thing too, because props to all the publishing, the indie publishers or indie labels, because they're just finding, great curation. Also, they just get games. They get great games and how to message them and get them out there. So.
Can I ask a question real quick? How many in the room are developers doing like premium games? And how many are doing free to play on mobile or PC? Okay, so most doing premium, some doing free to play. I mean, that's important because I think it really colors for the conversation. I think you talked about community management marketing as sort of a key trigger for whether or not you work with a publisher, and at least for premium games, I think that conversation has changed a lot. Meaning, I think even 18 or 24 months ago, if you were a premium game studio and you thought you had really good handle on your community, and you were pretty savvy at trade shows, and you had good social following, and you were good on Reddit and all that stuff, if you had the money, it was pretty much a given that you were going to try to self-publish. But I think that has changed. I've started to see really talented studios who actually know what they're doing when it comes to community management, when it comes to marketing, but they're electing to go with publishers in some instances also, because sort of the relationships with the platform holders becomes more important. Just this all goes back to sort of the crowdedness problem. Having a publisher who can get eyeballs in day one because they have a portfolio, they have a reputation, et cetera, that becomes more important. And while you may not want to give up 40% of your revenue or whatever it is, I think publishers are becoming more flexible, and I'm sure Steve can talk about this too. It's no longer is it simply, hey, this is our deal, we're taking 40%, and we're going to recoup and all that stuff. It could be, okay, you're going to fund the game, fine, you fund it, we're going to take a smaller percentage on the back end because we're just doing sort of the marketing piece. That's really changed, I think, in the last couple of years or less.
And I don't think it can be overstated just how much commitment the marketing push for your game actually is. It's a lot of time. And if you're a small team, then you have to really decide if it's worth it to take the time out of development to really put the right amount of resources towards marketing your game, because it will take somebody on your team off of development. Like there's just no doubt about it if you want to do it correctly. So, I mean, you see indies at all of these shows and they're hustling like crazy because they have to. That's all that they can do if they're self-publishing. And if you do go with a publisher or, with, a PR firm or something like that, at least you have somebody on your side kind of helping you direct where, your energy is being spent, and hopefully it's in the right place. But yeah, that commit is huge, and I think there's probably a lot of indies that are self-publishing that maybe don't really understand that. So it is about like finding out how much you think you're going to need to do, how big your team is, and is it worth it to you to give up the percentage of your revenue in order to make sure that somebody's there doing it for you, so you can focus on making a good game.
And I just wanted to add that on for the free-to-play developers, like our sort of thesis, I guess, right now for free-to-play indie developers is there's no such thing, because the market is just prohibitive for new entrants into the market. There are some exceptions to that rule. I mean, if you're a two-person shop and you can manage on pretty meager revenues and get a bunch of ad revenues are up, which is good. There's some nice paying units out there you can put in your game. So if you're optimizing for that, that's something. So you can survive as a very small scale indie doing free to play that way, but trying to self-publish and really do something, that's competing, sort of even the top 100 grossing. It's just not a thing, because the scale required is way too much for new entrants right now without a brand or a license or something else attached to it, or a lot of UA dollars.
So Dan, I wanted to kind of follow up. You mentioned it was, you probably have seen from your position at Unity, a lot of developers who are successfully self-publishing and successfully able to like market themselves and build their community. But that can be a real challenge for an indie that's small and doesn't have much of a lot of previous games or big community inbuilt fan base. But what are they doing? You think? What have you seen like work, and what have you seen developers doing right that really helps them be able to like build their own community and market their game or get promotion?
Well, I would say probably the ones that are doing it right are really, they're really engaging with the community. They're getting out there at events and, just meeting people and glad handing when it comes down to it. They're making sure that they're posting on their blog very regularly so that people know to come back and look for more info. They're spreading their info all over the place, whether it's IndieDB or Made with Unity, or getting out to like a normal IGN or GameSpot. Obviously, those things are a little harder to crack. But and then just making sure to find that connection with the community. It's once again, it's about your game and knowing how to market your game, what are your strengths, and picking those things that you think are most special about your game and really focusing on those and trying to get the community involved and even making those games better.
Just to chime in on that, I think what a lot of successful indies do is also they're really good at messaging. To Dan's point, I mean, and that's also the point of being crowded. There's so many games out there. And I've used this analogy a million times, so people in the room who've met me, you've heard this before. But I mean, we're busy adults. I mean, I'm a new dad. I only have 2 hours of free time a week at most. So what do I do with those 2 hours? Do I catch up on Game of Thrones, or do I, me going on the Steam store, going on PlayStation Network, or going on TIG Source or IMDb, do I check out your game? Do I read about it? Do I check out a demo? Well, how do you message someone who only is looking at your game for maybe 10 seconds, or at most, to really grab them, to kind of go back on Lee's talk earlier about visual style, like what grabs them, to kind of get across your message of your game? That's huge. So just hone your messaging and really kind of nail down why your game is worth someone's time. So.
How important do you think are the new kind of discovery channels like Twitch, paths of getting games discovered? It seems like a lot of developers these days are kind of really focused on getting that.
Very. This is kind of a story with Adult Swim in particular. I mean, when we started off, people thought, oh, Adult Swim, they're making games? Really? That's weird. And so just to get our name out there, we went really guerrilla marketing style. We went hit up every Twitch person out there who had a following. Say, hey, here's a game code. Can you please play Jazzpunk or Volgar? And it was awesome. It helped a lot, helped build a real strong community. We did that a few years ago. Now we have a list of close to 800, 900 Twitch, YouTube folks out there, and we treat them like press. And they were instrumental for the success of a lot of our early games, like Jazzpunk, like Volgar the Viking, like Duck Game. So, I mean, that, to me, don't ignore Twitch. If you have a game in development now, and you happen to know a prominent Twitch personality, or even someone who's starting out, and you want to share a build with them, by all means, get it out there, have people play it. And from A, for the exposure point of view, but B, heck, you're going to get feedback on your game that's just a fresh set of eyeballs who've never seen it before, which is invaluable. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're long on Twitch and other discovery streaming platforms for sure. We just made a big investment in a concept that's really utilizing Twitch and streaming in a really new, interesting way, and trying to really bring sort of what the players are doing and giving them agency. Sorry, the viewers giving them agency to impact things in the game. I think that's a wave that's coming. I can talk on and on about that, but I won't right now. But definitely, I think if you're building a game and you're not thinking about those sort of like moments that play well on YouTube or on Twitch, that you're probably not thinking about it the right way, because that is so critical. Just to reiterate what Steve said, and you don't need to be friends with PewDiePie to have success there. In fact, if you talk to the developer success team at Twitch, which you should, they're great and they're just around the corner. They'll tell you that a lot of those people who have real big followings on Twitch, for example, they're sort of locked into playing the same game that they've been playing, because like people are watching them play whatever, Counter-Strike, and if they switch, they're going to lose all those people, and that's where the money comes from. So, chances of getting them, those big high-level people, to switch over and play your game is pretty low. But there's a lot of sort of mid-level guys who play different stuff, and those are the people you probably ought to be approaching anyway, because they're more flexible and play different things. And that goes for all the different sort of streaming platforms.
And I think there's another thing to bring up too, is that one thing that I've seen a little bit more of lately is developers are actually live streaming their development. So they're actually getting on Twitch and making a game while people are watching. And that's a pretty good way to interact with people that are interested about your game. It may not be like a huge audience, but it is a way to actually really connect with people and get them invested in what you're doing, and have them then go out and evangelize what you're doing as well.
Great. So I wanted to go back to a prior comment that Keith made, which was that you're seeing really experienced indie developers even choosing to work with publishers today, and that's it's clearly not a decision to be made lightly, because they're giving up a rev share for doing that. So I guess Steve, are you seeing that as well? And what do you think is the reasoning behind all that?
Yeah, I'm seeing that. And I've had some very successful developers they've self-published games, they've made money, they've made hits. Who've come to me and like, hey, I know I said no back then, but I want to work with a publisher now. I think it goes back to just the point of you have to wear a lot of hats. I mean, even though you might be great at going on Reddit or streaming, do you want to take that time away from developing your game? That's a choice you have to make. And for a lot of developers that I've met, it's not worth it. It's not worth their time to send out hundreds of press codes. It's not worth their time streaming the game when they should be making the game. So a lot of them have reached out. It's like, hey, help fill the holes. Wear the marketing hat, wear the PR hat, wear the QA hat, wear the hat to go talk to Sony or Microsoft or Valve to help get our game featured or things like that. So.
And are you seeing a different, new approaches to publishing as a result of that? Like new. I think different ways of structuring deals with developers that kind of touch on.
Yeah, I mean.
The new method.
I can't speak for all labels or publishers, but we're super flexible. I mean, it really depends on the needs of the developer, because we see so many games at various stages. Sometimes I have folks come to me and say, hey, I'm going to go on Kickstarter next week. Before that, do you want to look at my game?
Or Fig.
Or Fig. No, or Fig. Or sometimes they've come to us after the fact. Hey, we got funding, whether it's from Fig or our government. A lot of governments out there give money to developers, and they still need a little bit more money. Some of them don't need money. They just need hey, we're good with money. We just need someone to go to trade shows and help with PR or press or marketing. So it's kind of, at least we are very flexible in terms of what are your needs? Tell me what you need, and we could go from there.
Yeah, I think that's important for everyone to realize. So, because we're equity investors, meaning we invest on the studio level versus on the game level, like Steve does for the most part. We work and sort of have relationships with a lot of different publishers, because a lot of the studios we've invested in over the years, which is 24 at this point, they want to work with publishers, and so we're always sort of trying to find the best fit, whatever. And Steve knows if we have a game that we see that might be a fit, I'll just call up Steve and say, what do you think? So we do see terms from a lot of different publishers, and the ones that we continue to recommend to developers are those that are flexible and aren't sort of locked into the, oh no, it's we're taking full recoup and 50% and blah blah blah, because that's what our deal is. I think the good publishers these days, because you have seen, right? Every couple weeks it seems like there's some article about some new digital publisher that you never heard of that sort of springs up, and those do happen, but you really have to get to know those people, get to know the terms of their agreements, and to know whether or not they're flexible and providing real value based on what they're taking. And so I think the people that we send people to are people we know who, like Steve, will listen to what your problems are as a studio and actually offer solutions and then build the deal around that, rather than saying, okay, you have to fit into our existing sort of bread box.
I think it's also worth noting that the breadth of publishers at this point. There's a lot of publishers that are really focused on certain types of games. So you have to think about what game you're making and who it might fit in with. Paradox is different than Devolver, for instance. You're going to find two very different styles of curation there. Paradox is all about strategy games and really thoughtful, deep experiences, and Devolver's about some crazy stuff. They just
it
want.
Looks like it was made in Russia.
Yes, exactly. It's some really. They're both doing really great things with developers and allowing them a lot of creative freedom. But I'm sure they have different terms in terms of what they're asking for. But yeah, it is about once again, looking at your game and yourselves as developers and deciding, which one of these guys do I fit with? Who do I even approach when I'm talking about trying to find a publisher?
And on that point, portfolio fit is huge. Do you fit this label's portfolio? But also don't assume you know their portfolio, because a few years ago, people thought we only made certain kinds of games. But we obviously working with folks like Double Fine with Headlander, and now Death's Gambit's coming out, Rain World, etc. Those are not traditional Adult Swim games. They're just awesome games with great style. So. Yeah,
this is a good segue into sort of practical tips for the indies out there, which is what's the right time and how should they approach each of you with their game?
So we're equity investors, as I said, so we invest at a studio level. So so we have sort of traditional sort of equity investor economics, which means versus a publisher sort of generally speaking, it's fine investing on a game level, on IP level, and then taking a margin on that game, right? Where maybe they make 30% return on their investment or 50% or whatever. Like as equity investors, we're looking to eventually make at least 10x because we're early stage. We come in, we're usually the first equity investors in. We want to, if we put $200,000 into your studio, we want to know or think that, okay, in 7 years, we can make $2 million, right? Because this studio has enough, they have aspirations, they want to grow, they want to scale, and they have, all these things that can happen, and that will return capital to us, right? So the game that you're pitching us is important, but it's only important in as much as it's building sort of scaffolding for you to build and build and build for your next game and your game after that, right? Because we're looking at, does this game help you get enough traction to get to the next one and the next one, right? So that's the way we think. So you can come to us early. You need to have a prototype, but you really need to have sort of that long-term vision of your studio versus if you're in, and I'll let the experts talk about what a publisher looks for. That seems to be more of a what is this game and what's this game gonna do?
In terms of when to reach out to someone like a publisher, anytime. For me, it's anytime because I want to see a game as early as possible, even if you don't have a demo or a prototype. I mean, eventually we do want to see one. I mean, we're not going to oh yeah, this is a nice GDD. Okay, cool. We're going to give you money. No, we do want to see a prototype eventually, but we, in terms of thinking ahead and looking at our portfolio, like right now, like I'm locking out games for late 2018, early 2019 now. So we're always 3 years out. So we're planning in advance. So in terms of when, as soon as possible. And just because, like, for right now, it goes in cycles. Like right now, it just happens. I'm looking at like 6 or 7 different RPGs right now. It just so happens I'm getting hit up with RPGs, and so it's kind of like, which ones do I can't shoot all 7 of them. I don't want to become Atlas. I want us to be diverse. So I think definitely get someone's attention as soon as you can. Let them know what's up. I mean, it could be as early as like, hey, Adult Swim or another publisher X, hey, we're going to do this game. Demo's 5 months out. We're going to go to FIG, et cetera, et cetera. But at least let us know what's out there. I'd rather see a game early than like, oh, crap, when did that? Damn, I missed that thing. So get it early. Also, so the powers that be at a publisher can just even know, like, oh, this is coming down the pipe. Okay, in this genre, I'm going to kind of mentally leave a spot for this game. I want to know what's up with this one. So it's never a bad time, and it's never too early. So.
Would you say that it's too early if they don't have a correct plan in place?
Oh, we'll let you know. Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. If it looks kind of screwy, the right publisher will let you know.
How about you, Dan? How to approach Unity about taking advantage
about
of
promotion and stuff?
Yeah.
We're a little different. Obviously, we do want to know about your games. We're always happy to hear about anything that you guys are making if you're using Unity. We're happy to hear about it, like we like it. Obviously, in terms of us like actively promoting something, generally they need to be a little farther along. There needs to be a good demo if we're showing it at a showcase, or it has to be far along visually if we're putting it up on stage at one of our conferences in terms of putting it in a reel or something like that. So it does need to be a little bit farther along. You need to have a pretty solid understanding of what your game is, that kind of stuff. But it's a completely different proposition than what these guys. You can come to us earlier than you should come to IGN or somebody like that, though. When you approach press, you need to have a very solid demo, very solid understanding of what your game is, so that you're on point with the messaging, as we talked about before, and you're not confusing them. You've got a solid first push for them to be memorable.
And then when the developers do approach you, so what are the things that you're looking for that kind of let their project stand out from others?
If it's super early and you don't have a demo, definitely message what your game is. Marketing 101, what is the elevator pitch for your game? In 1 or 2 sentences, what is this game? If it is early, definitely have an art direction nailed down, at least for me. As I mentioned, visual style is very important. I mean, as I said, we look at so many games on a daily, weekly basis, not just us as on this side, but you guys play games, you see games all the time. What stands out to you? So nailing down your art direction, elevator pitch for your game, and then that's a very good start.
Yeah, I mean, for investors, most investors will talk publicly in part or in total about their investment thesis and the kinds of games and studios are looking to invest in. And we do that all the time because we want to get the word out that these are the kind of studios we're looking for. It's on our website. It's when you can look up talks that we do and we talk about it. For us, we're really looking at going forward. We're looking at games. I mentioned sort of games that are utilizing Twitch or discovery platforms in an interesting way. We're looking for the kinds of studios that are leveraging community. Generally, that means multiplayer in some way, but we're sort of platform agnostic. But we try to be pretty clear about that kind of stuff on our website and when we talk publicly or to the press or whatever. And I think also, we make it clear that you need a prototype. You need to have you can't be like two people who are about to sort of thinking about quitting their full-time job and then going, like, you need to be in it, right? Because, you need to have skin in the game. So we want to show that we want to know that you're committed to building the studio. You've burned your bridges and this is what you're going to do. It doesn't generally work out well when we get pitches from developers who are saying, I'm kind of doing this part-time and on weekends or whatever. That's really not very interesting to us for the most part.
Again, from our perspective, we're a little bit different because we're kind of looking for anything across the board. Any genre, platform, anything that Unity supports, like we like to see it. Creative, like really creative ideas, we love to see those as well. We do when we're really pushing and promoting something, we're probably looking for a pretty good visual polish to it. Even if it's not like really high fidelity or anything, it's got to have like a very consistent style. There's a lot of games that don't have that. And that's, you really, when you are like putting together your artistic vision for a game, it's good to kind of try to find a consistent line across the entirety of your game, from UX to visual to in-game assets, all that kind of stuff.
What are some best practices in terms of actually pitching? I guess the process of pitching, you probably have your pet peeves and things like that. Like, what are some practical tips you can give?
If you email us, we will read it. You don't have to email us the next day. We will definitely get to it. I think it's also, for me personally, I understand that people come, you might need advice for how to pitch a game. So I definitely work with developers early on before I show it to my boss, who makes the ultimate decision. I don't show my team until me and the developer, we've chatted about the pitch. Like, okay, cool, you've nailed all these points, or you have everything we need before I show it to my team. So definitely find someone who's flexible with you on that, because every pitch, everyone has their own style, basically. Oh, here's my pitch. Like, I personally don't read PowerPoints, because if you have a 10-page PowerPoint, I don't have time. Again, it really depends on taste. For me, it's just art style, get some examples of that, be concise with your messaging, because you have to also figure, just like the example I made, we all look at so many games, we don't have time to read a long GDD, we don't. So if you can nail down your game to a few sentences, to a paragraph, have some cool screenshots, then we'll chat longer about and dive a little deeper into your game.
I guess I have more time than Steve because I want your PowerPoint. And I won't, if you send me an email, I'm probably not going to take it seriously unless it's in a pitch format. And that usually means a deck. Because, part of that is, we're talking about two different things. Like, Steve can probably get the general gist of the game, from a few sentences of prose. But I need to understand what your team structure is, what your equity structure is, what your, long-term vision for the studio is. And those things usually need a little bit more explanation. So don't send me, we actually allow people to submit pitches to us directly on our website, which not all investors do. So we have a form for that, so it's pretty dead easy. Gameplay video is great. We provide a link for that. But we really want to, I think the question was sort of like some of the pet peeves, but you know, for us, like if you're not pitching the studio and you're pitching your game, we really can't do much with that. Like, so you need to be pitching, this is my company, and this is the game we're building as part of that company's evolution, right? That's a little bit, this is a lot different.
I don't have a whole lot to add except just to add on that that concise messaging is very important, and I've found that it, like, when we were getting pitched at IGN for doing, like, looking at games, the pitches that I liked the most were always boiled down to maybe 3 to 5 points about your game that really set it apart, whether that's the art style or some gameplay mechanic. But if you give us a giant list of everything that's in the game, it's too much, and it's hard to really get a sense of what the game really is. So it's, again, looking at your game, looking at yourselves, and finding that core message of what's important to you and what you think is going to be important to consumers about your game.
Great. I guess I want to check in with you all now that we're at sort of the tail end. If there are any questions out there that you'd like to have to ask directing any of the panelists. Yes.
So you said there's not really a point where it's too early to talk to a publisher, but is there a point during development where it's too late?
No, no, we've done it before where. Oh yeah. So in case you guys didn't hear, he said, is it ever too late to reach out to a publisher? And my answer is no, because during the course of production, different things come up, whether it's, guys run out of money, or your other partner, publisher, whoever that may be, might bailed, or something happened, or your team structure changed, whatever it is. Different needs arise over time, so it's never too late. I mean, we've considered games that have, in a perfect world, yeah, we would love to be the ones who announce this game. Hey, this is game X, and here it is, world is awesome. But obviously, in the indie space, a lot of these games, they're already known because people are out there on forums or crowdfunding or whatnot. So it's never too late. It really depends on what your needs are and if a publisher can help. And if we think so, it's never too late. It's never too late to find a great game to work on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you said this is a question for more on the publisher side. But so, the general gist of the question, I think, is publishers don't often give specifics publicly about the amount that they fund, and maybe some other numbers about what percentage they take, et cetera. So, just because we work with so many different publishers, I'll jump in to keep you from having to.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks.
How much do you need to raise for your studio, for your game? People fund $200,000. Now, there are not a ton of publishers out there who fund $200,000, but there are a dozen I can think of off the top of my head. But, the only way to sort of find out is to meet with publishers, and you need to be spending as much time as you can at GDC, at PAX, at all these shows, and you have to. And this is one of the things we work with, especially for our younger sort of portfolio studios, is even if you don't have a game you're pitching, you need to be meeting with publishers. Most publishers like it because they get an early bead on sort of what's coming. But even if you're sort of in the concept phase, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong here, they like it because they get an idea what you're working on. But two, this is like business intelligence gathering for you. right? So you can go and meet with some publisher, say, hey, I'm working this game, it's going to cost $300K, and they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. Or they'll be like, that's a little bit out of our range, or not this year, but next year. But you got to do that stuff ahead of time. You can't wait till you're like, so even if you don't have a game now, you need to be at all these shows. You need to schedule meetings. Bring your concept art, bring your GDD, whatever.
Or write down their Twitter handle or get their email.
Yeah, I mean,
because to Keith's point, a lot of it's timing as well. Because when the time you're ready, if I had 250, 300K, whatever it is, open, when you're ready a year from now, I might have already spent that money. So a lot of it is get the lines of communication open, tell me what you're working on, give me a timeline. Okay, cool, I could gather whatever materials you may have, show my team, see if there's interest first of all. And if there is, I'll tell my team, hey, cool, this guy's working on a game, it'll be done in a couple years, we'll get a demo a few months from now, but they need X amount of money. It's better to at least pick our brains first to kind of know where we're at, because I might tell you, hey, we're at the end of the year, I gotta spend this money now, but hey, when January comes, we're gonna get X amount of money more. So kind of know, you kind of got to read the temperature of each publisher. You don't want to wait.
And just add really quickly, it's not that hard to sort of look at the kinds of games that publishers publish. But okay, this game Paradox made, that's a pretty big game. That must have been pretty pricey. Versus, Devolver did this one. This looks like it was a two-person. You can sort of get the idea where people fall just by looking at the games that are out there.
Yeah, 200 is not that much.
Can I ask a quick question related? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Well, it's easy to find pitch decks about how to pitch VCs on a small business. Are there any examples of pitch decks that you could share with, say, students that say, here's how you get your studio together to convince somebody you've got a really compelling game? Because I looked at your website and you ask some great questions like, what are you doing and where are you located and all that. But Keith, your website in Montreal, but I didn't see any actual templates for how do you actually pitch a game.
We would say it's not that hard to sort of look around and find stuff, but there's really no template for how. But remember, we're looking at a studio, right? So pitching a studio is not dissimilar from pitching an early stage e-commerce startup, right? It's about, this is the vision, this is the market opportunity, this is the advantage, this is the team. It's all the same stuff, but the product you're building happens to be a game, right? So you could use that template, and we're not going to beat people up because it's not the PowerPoint is not exactly if the idea is there, then we start to dig in and do due diligence, right? So give us something to work with. That's all we're really asking for.
Thank you.
Hi, we had a couple questions on the Twitch channel, the Twitch stream, which I'm going to try to consolidate. You talked earlier about the cost of developers sort of weighing whether to do their own promotion, go to events versus work with a publisher, do their own Twitch stream versus doing some other kind of promotion. And the question is, what advice can you give about how to make that decision, about how to spend your time as a developer? When is it worth it and when is it not? And can you share any examples of sort of a good balance between doing your own promotion versus working with another organization or like a publisher that's going to have a monetary cost or some other impact?
I think a good example of someone who does it really well is Rami of Lambier. Shout out to Rami. But he does it really well where he's not only showing his development of Nuclear Throne, but he's selling himself. I mean, Rami is a rock star in the space, and people know him and people support Vlambeer. Why are you streaming? I would say the first thing is why are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing it to promote your game? Are you doing it to share, your creative process? In terms of should you do that, it depends on the person. I mean, obviously I'm biased. As a publisher. Yeah, come to me, bring me your great game. Do you have the time? I mean, is your time better spent adding to your game, or should you be going to trade shows? Publishers, we are flexible. If you want to come to a trade show, we'd love to have you at PAX and our booth with us, but if you want us to go represent you, we can. It kind of depends on yourself. I don't want to say, yes, definitely come to a publisher, but it depends what your needs are.
Well, that concludes our panel, but I think all of us will be available and around later today.
I've got an announcement.
Okay.
Is Michael Ventnor here? Does anybody know Michael Ventnor? Yes, I've got your business cards.
Thank you.
Yes.
And so we'll be around later today to fill any questions with you guys individually. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.